and welcome to the FSP podcast. I'm Chris Campbell, and today we're here to talk about AI, but from a different angle. We're going to focus in on the people. I head up our data and AI capability within FSP, and I have a background in transformation, change, and all things digital. Just going to ask my colleagues to introduce themselves. Jess?
I'm Jess Bailey, and I'm a senior change consultant here at FSP.
Hi, I'm Craig Paterson. I'm one of our principal consultants focusing on digital transformation.
So to kick things off, I'm going to ask you both a question, which is, what have you read, heard or experienced related to AI in the last month that really excites you? So I'll come to Jess first.
Yeah, so I was actually speaking to my husband about this podcast, and I said, this is what I'm doing. And actually, so he's in the gaming, racing and esports industry, and what they're actually looking to do, which I think is really cool, is they're looking to enhance the fandom experience. And what they're doing is finding celebrity icons like Formula One drivers or, content creators that are famous on YouTube, and making them more personalised. So when you log on to a gaming experience, you're going to get faced with your celebrity or your icon to say, hey, Jess, gaming's really cool, but I think it's really important that, you go to the gym, you get outside, you go to school. And actually having that one-to-one experience and that one-to-one connection with, someone who is your icon and you look up to, I think, it's going to be amazing. I think it's going to be a bit of a game changer in the gaming industry. So, I thought it was really cool.
Awesome. Really interesting. And Craig?
As a resident old person here, I read a book, right? An old-fashioned book.
What's that?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick, I think it is. So the middle section of that was really good because it was talking about how AI impacts tasks more than it impacts jobs, and how we need to rethink jobs and rethink about the context in which jobs happen. So I found that a really interesting section. But as the father of a 14-year-old, I'm immediately thinking, what does it mean for her future, right? So it got me thinking about education and how we educate people around being comfortable in the topic of AI, being confident that they've got the right to have a point of view in it. So trying to join those dots between some of the theory and the practicality for the generations that are really going to experience this.
Awesome. So to use that as a jumping off point then, so there's a lot of speculation in media and fear that actually AI will remove jobs. So to continue on that theme, Craig, do you think it removes jobs or do you think it changes jobs, and what will be important in the future?
I definitely think it changes jobs. Increasingly, the reports on it, so it went from like 80% of jobs will disappear to like there'll be the same amount of jobs, they'll just be different jobs. I think what's interesting about it is in previous sort of technology-led changes, it's always been manual workers that have been at risk, whereas this is everyone that's at risk. So you get like a bigger fear reaction round about it. So I think jobs will change. We were talking earlier that there's another book, The Future of Professions by Susskind and Susskind, and it talks about what's going to change. And one of the big takeaways for me was that the learning period in job is going to change. So when I join an organisation as an intern or a graduate and I'm learning on the job, a lot of that's going to disappear because AI can do it quicker. So is there a lost generation coming up that is going to be au fait with the technology, but not that comfortable with the sector that they're in? So, and I think I'm starting to see that in law, starting to see that in medicine a little bit as well. So I think it'll change jobs, but also, broken record, I think it'll change the way that we educate people and we teach people about it. So yeah, definitely a shift coming. And I think people just need to feel more confident about letting their voices, fears, concerns, hopes be heard.
Awesome. And Jess, following on from that theme, like your day job is supporting organisations through change. Any kind of views as to how the AI angle comes in with there?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because you do get the question typically that everyone says, oh, is AI going to take over my job, and am I going to be redundant and all of this? And I actually think what we say to people is AI is fundamentally there to help you. So the way you use AI will actually enhance your job, and actually, the work you produce and how you collaborate with it will, make your job a lot easier. And I think, as Craig said, AI is it's coming. I think it's good to know that it is coming and change is coming, and it's more of a culture and a behavioural shift rather than actually how you interact with AI. So I think we need to focus on how the behaviour behind it and the thought process of how people use it within their job as well. And like Craig said, I think jobs are going to change. I think the skills you have in your job is going to change. And, in 10 years down the line, job descriptions and that sort of thing is going to fundamentally change. And it's just bringing people on that journey with us. I think it's really important.
Awesome. And again, continuing on that theme, so at the moment we're supporting different organisations in the rollout of some AI tools. Any immediate lessons as to how to get the value out of that as opposed to just the technology aspect?
Yeah, so when we did our first kind of co-pilot project, what was fundamental is how much change management is needed. I think we didn't have much time on the project, and actually, it was new to me. It was new to the business as well, and actually realise how much people don't know about AI and what it can do. And I think that was such a big learning curve, and it's more time needs to be spent on the education around how to use it, how to, prompt it correctly, how to give the data that you want it to kind of feed back to you. So what you want back from it, I think, is key. So I think, the education piece, I think, was massive. And making it fun as well. People are scared of AI. So we did, themed training and tried to make it a bit more engaging and a bit fun. So I think if we can do that in future and have more time focused on change management, I think, that'd be brilliant.
Awesome. Definitely resonate. I think if you read the media, anything in the media just now, hour by hour, day by day, you go on that spectrum of being mildly terrified to thinking this is an awesome opportunity and it's going to change the world for everyone in a positive light. So on that spectrum, Craig, where do you sit at the moment? What's kind of front of mind when I ask that question?
Am I more worried or excited?
Yeah.
I'm probably more excited than worried. Probably because I've lived through my worried phase, right? So I've been worried a lot about it. And then you sort of dig into it a little bit more and see where it can be used and why it can be used. So I'm probably more worried about people rather than the technology. So the people that use the technology, how they're going to apply it. But we were talking earlier about myself and a colleague gave ourselves the challenge to use more AI tools, right? So we were talking a lot about it, and you realise that there are lots of AI tools in everyone's life. So let's get some real examples. So when you bring it in, you start to see what it can do and what it can't do. I think there's a sort of, it's not a worrying theme, but AIs want to be liked, right? So you ask it a question and it more or less says, what a great question. Here's an answer that endorses the point of view you've already got. So wasn't that really clever? Yeah, right? So there's a danger of it becomes an echo chamber, right? And it becomes a validation. So an example of that was I asked a large language model a question. How many employees are there in this organisation? And it came back with an answer with total confidence. And I was really happy because it was the number I'd thought. And then I followed the source through. And the source was a comment that I'd made in a chat that I think it's about that many people, right? So again, it's just how you use it and how you validate it, So I'm excited about like how it can enhance what I can do, how it gets me to be productive earlier. I worry about if I'm lazy, right? If I'm short of time, the shortcuts just validate what I've got. But I think if we open the conversation out to more people, bring people in, I think that's a benefit from us all. I was going to build on one point that you'd said. I was in a workshop once. It was just raising awareness about AI, the value of AI and how to use it. And we're just going round the room, getting people to introduce themselves. And most people were kind of cautiously happy about being here and curious about what was going on. And I got to one person who folded their arms when it came to their introduction, and they said their name, and they said, my job is, I'm a representative of the union. I'm here to make sure you don't use data and AI here. I was like, whoa, so at least I knew it was a tough audience member. Right? So we went through the day and we talked about value and reality, what it could and couldn't do. And I went back round the room again and asked everyone one thing they were going to do different as a result of the day. So I'm kind of counting down to get to this person. Right? And thankfully their arms were no longer crossed. And they said, my job is to engage with the union members and let them know how and why we should do this. So I'm not saying that I was a genius, right? There was a whole bunch of guest speakers and stuff that we had in. But just by bringing someone in, letting them know that they've got a legitimate point of view, they can be heard, they can ask the difficult questions, is a good way of turning people around. So I think if we have the broader conversations, bring in the people impacted by the change, it just becomes a lot more real and it's a lot more increased likelihood of success.
I think that education piece is absolutely critical, because a lot of the reaction comes from a place of not understanding it, and therefore immediately you only think of the negatives. Just out of curiosity, when you ask AI a question, whatever tool that might be, do you put please and thank you? Do you use manners?
I use manners, right?
Okay.
But the reason I use manners is a friend of mine who will go unnamed is very rude to a number of devices that he can speak to. And he was doing it from a fun perspective. But at the time, my daughter was quite young, and she's kind of watching this adult and the way that they were engaging. And I thought, that's a little bit unhealthy. So my daughter and wife laugh at how much I have gone the other way and say, please, can you, and thank you at the end of things. But yeah, so I'm a please and thank you.
So it's not just because you're worried about the rise of the machines and Terminator style then.
No, but I think it helps.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think that's a really important part of society, because hopefully people would agree that I'm quite mannerly and polite. But actually, when I use AI and never use manners and never really please or thank you, and it's just really interesting, because it comes back to, and I'll maybe come to Jess next, is that whole sentient point is one of the reasons why people use manners, is that they start to name it, give it a being, and therefore it feels as though it's a person. You're worried about feelings. I'm just curious, Jess, any reaction on that big question?
Well, funny enough, I was listening to a podcast recently, and someone was saying, yes, AI, it can't feel, it fundamentally, but feelings are actually just biological patterns. And what it could do, and it doesn't do it now, but maybe over time, what it will do is be able to understand human emotion actually better than some humans can. So if you had a camera on your face for, I don't know, for a month, it could probably say, so when you're angry, you slightly raise your eyebrow, or you slightly smirk when, I don't know, you're happy, or something like that, which I found really interesting. But I think it is important to say that, AI, it doesn't have a feeling. But I do think, I'm a bit like Craig, I'm very polite to it, but I think I also think of it as an assistant. So if I was talking to someone and I wanted it to help me to do something, I'd always say, oh, please, could you do this in this way? Thank you so much. So yeah, I do think, there's an element of, it would never be able to feel, but I do think it will understand human emotions, which I don't think is a bad thing either. I think it's good to have that interaction like it would be a person. Otherwise, you could go down the route of do this.
Yeah.
which yeah.
It's really interesting, because when you ask the question, can AI understand emotion, you immediately take it on a human context and how we understand emotion, which we can't tangibly answer really. Whereas actually there are cues and things, like you say, body language, and you mentioned even the story about in a workshop people folding their arms, that you just subconsciously pick up on, that perhaps you're not aware of why you pick up on the vibe, whereas there is a way to program that. So yeah, Craig, any kind of response or thoughts on that?
So I think we can codify things, but there's a danger of that. So I'm going to tell you another story about somebody folding their arms in a workshop, and it was me. Right? So I went into a workshop, it's the first time I met people, and I was sitting nice straight back with my arms folded the entire time. And at the break, I got told that my body language was really quite aggressive. I just had a slipped disc, right? It was the only way I could sit and not be in pain, right? So we have these shortcuts for that's angry, Craig. But it wasn't. It was just like, I have a sore back and this is how I'm comfortable. So it's that kind of, when we codify things, there will always be exceptions. So what's the rationale for codifying it? What do we want out of it? So I kind of like the idea of something that doesn't have emotion, sometimes asking me questions. So there's as long as I know that I'm talking to a person or an AI, or a person with an AI, right? So there's lots of people that engage deeply with an AI because it's not a person, right? So that AI doesn't have baggage unless it's been coded into it, right? Well, I'm sure we'll talk about bias at some point, but I know that is going to be a very straightforward transaction. Whereas I want a different thing from speaking to a human being. I'm looking for maybe a little bit more empathy, like stories. I did this, a bit more connection. Whereas if I'm looking for something that's maybe more factual, like is this normal? Is this usual? All these sort of things. So I think there's different roles for it. So I'm quite happy to have a suite of, I used to say people, but sources that will go for information. And maybe building on your point, AI is one of those, right? But I can't imagine many situations where it would be the only source I would go to.
Yeah.
I'm also not sure if I even remotely answered the question that you asked me. Right?
Don't worry about that, that's fine.
Okay, so good consultancy skill there. Yeah.
I think the interesting bit that you touched on there, so you mentioned that at different times you're looking for a different response, but that probably plays into different personalities as well, and neurodiversity. So accessibility, there's tools that support different neurodiverse folk, and AI is a bit of an opportunity in that space. And Jess, I'm not sure from the change perspective if we're starting to see any benefits or opportunities from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always going to be positives and negatives. And I think if we look at the positive side, you know, if you've got dyslexia, Copilot or any AI tool is a great way to just check your grammar, check your spelling. You know, if you need to send an important email, put it into the AI space, will really help you actually, and probably make you feel more confident in the future about emailing a boss or emailing, you know, big questions or whatever that might be, or even Teams messages. You can do it in Teams now. So I think from that perspective, it's great. And, you know, if you've got ADHD, we've been working with some clients quite closely who have kind of an ADHD kind of way of working. And they find it so easy just to go into Copilot and actually just put in their thoughts, brain dump, and then it can come back and put it into a really concise format. And I think that is going to be brilliant, I think. And also kind of kids going through school and actually people who struggle within education, using those sorts of tools, I think, are really powerful. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think there's different types of AI. We're not going to go down the technical route of that today, but one of the big areas is that kind of natural language processing. And I often see Craig in the office sitting with his headset on, talking to his computer, which is either just to try make me not go and chat to him, might be. But one of the reasons you do that is when you're writing documents, your first pass will be a kind of voice note. And if you layer that accessibility tool with AI, then actually from a productivity perspective, the opportunities are pretty huge. So yeah, Craig, any views on that?
Yeah,
you can answer the first part as to whether you're just doing it to avoid me or not.
No, you know I love you, Chris. Okay, we even turned up with the same shirts on.
Did, yeah.
That's a connection. I now speak documents more than I write them because it's just much quicker. And I think that because I'm not a great typer, I overthink what I type, whereas I'm much more comfortable talking and going with a flow and getting a first pass. So it's now become my go-to, right? So that's why I look antisocial with the headphones on. It's just like, it's a much, much quicker way of getting there. So starting to use tools to help me with that. And again, we were talking about multiple tools. So using so voice to text is one, using Grammarly to check my grammar, using Grammarly or something else to check my tone of voice, etc. Using Copilot or ChatGPT to ask, how do I come across in here? So I've suddenly got all these different tools that I use that if you'd spoken to me even like 6 months ago, I didn't have as many of those tools in my kit bag. But now if you threaten to take them away from me, I would be telling you like, it's going to take me twice as long to do this. Right? So, but it was just, slowly sort of nudging in there. But also building on the point that you were talking about dyslexia. So I think it's great schools that they're giving people, for example, with dyslexia more support. But a lot of it's like human support. So you're teaching the child that they need support to do this. Whereas with AI tools, they become much more control of their own destiny. So I was talking to someone about the support that we're getting. So it was about, reading what I've said, checking the grammar and all that. And in my head, I'm ticking off, AI tools can do all that for you. And that feels like a much more empowering way to say, you need these tools and you can have these tools. But it's a level playing field. So now I'm doing my homework without having to reach out to like my friends, my teachers, my parents. So I think there's how you use it to make the person feel more confident. So often talk about how do you rush to value, right? So getting that person to the valuable point where they're learning because they've got tools to help them with the challenges that we're getting them to the learning point is amazing. So you take that into work and how we're bringing in new tools all the time to help us to get to the point of adding some value quicker.
Yeah, quite a few bits to come back on there. I think the first, if we think about different use of tools that are accessible today. So if you use WhatsApp, I would only ever type a message to someone, but quite a few of my nieces and nephews, slightly younger generation, will do voice notes back, which kind of horrifies me because it's like, why is there a 2-minute message I need to sit and listen to? And I would feel uncomfortable doing a voice note back to them. But I guess that leads into some of the accessibility of the tools in terms of generation. So do you think so 2 questions here, come to Jess first. One, does that pose a risk that actually people move away from things like written form? And two, is that in itself slightly exclusive in that different generations and or digital literacy will have a different experience, and therefore it creates a bit of a diverging path?
That's a really good question. I think if we look at the generation gap, I think it's just going back to the education piece. I think you almost need to do the education in different stages with the different generation, because I think the younger generation, and you're so right, are doing, but I mean, I love a voice note. Guilty.
Generation.
So I think looking at the education piece, and if we are looking at schools, I think when we were talking earlier, it's doing the education piece with the younger generation to make sure they're not just relying on AI. I think it's so important that they have AI as a resource and a tool and a source of kind of help and support, but actually they need to kind of develop the critical thinking and the cognitive skills and abilities that you learn in your school years. I think that's what we need to do with the education piece there. And then I think with kind of the older generation who are just kind of picking it up and actually more of a fear around jobs, I think that's the education around ethics. And, again, it's similar, I guess, to schools. You're using it in a way that helps you. And I think it's just being able to collaborate with the tool in the best way that you can in school or within jobs that has a similar effect. But I think education does need to be kind of tailored to where you are kind of in your journey with AI.
Awesome. Craig?
I'm going to go on the education thing as well. So there's a view of education that like wise older people pass on, right? And I think that's gone. So in academia, they talk about the sage on the stage versus the guide on the side, right? So the sage on the stage days are gone because of the pace of change, right? So it's much more about the guide on the side. And then it's about peer support. And then it's about reverse mentoring. So we were talking about young people in our lives and how they pick up things in a certain way, how they use things in ways that we don't. So I think we need to really think about this big AI change is coming at us very quickly at all generations at the one time. So to say that you are the generation or the person that knows exactly how to do it is naive at best, slightly arrogant at worst, right? So how do we change that? We need different voices that talk about it. And so for me, using those different voices, bringing them together, realising we can learn from each other, is a much more exciting. That's why I'm back on the excited spectrum again, right? The opportunity to be excited about this and inclusive about it. So we've talked about different diverse needs, talking about age gaps as well. There's a big opportunity for these tools to bring us together to have better, richer conversations.
Awesome. So we'll shift topics or angles ever so slightly now. So it's often said that AI is just another type of transformation, a different kind of step in the journey of evolution. So I'm going to pose that question to both of you. Is it the same as digital transformation? Is it the same as everyone sitting at a laptop as opposed to years ago there being one computer in the corner of an office? Or is it something different? So, Jess?
I think it's different in the sense that I think AI is coming at us with speed. It's like a high-speed train that just doesn't stop and probably is actually getting a lot faster. I mean, it's similar to digital transformation, as in you're going to get to your destination at some point, and I think that the speed in which it's coming is something that I don't think we've experienced before. And this is everyone, I think, within AI. So it's similar to an extent, but I think we've got to be able to get used to the speed that it's coming at us and actually start embracing it, because otherwise you're going to be left behind. So I think, again, going back to bringing people on that journey, we're learning just as kind of fast or slowly, if you like, as everyone else. So I think it's focusing on what we can kind of bring people on the journey with, but also we're all learning together. I think, as Craig said, we're all in this together. And when we speak to clients and customers, I openly say, I'm learning this just as fast as you are. So let's do it together. Anything you learn, I'll let you know, and vice versa. And when Copilot just started, actually, people were getting the new features before me, and they're like, "Oh, Jess, what does this do?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but let's do it together." So I think, yeah, going back to that, I think it's similar I guess, but it's just the speed, I think, is very different and new to what we've kind of experienced before.
So, same question to Craig, and as part of the answer, maybe do you have a view as to what are the common themes that you can apply, or what are the different approaches you can apply to leverage the opportunity as opposed to be kind of hit by the risk?
I'll have a go. You can correct me if I miss it. Yeah. So I'm going to give you a yes answer and a no answer. So just edit out the one that's not right. Okay, right. So is it the same as digital transformation? Yes, in that it's a conveyor belt of change. So talking to people, it's not about getting ready for AI. It's getting ready for continuous change at a faster rate. And sort of bring that alive by going, in 5 years' time, they'll be laughing about the fact that we spent a day in a workshop just working out what AI was, because it'll be so embedded. So yes, it's the same because it's waves. But no, it's different because, as Jess was saying, it's coming really quicker, but it's also coming at all parts of life at the same time. So it's not like there's a controlled experiment in banking that we'll all learn from as we apply it somewhere else. It's getting applied everywhere at the same time. So you get a kind of yes and no answer. So yes, it's the same if you think of it as this is like wave after wave of digital-led, societal-led change that we have to adopt. But no, in that it's hitting us all at the one time. It's hitting us really quickly. There aren't experts, right? There are experts in little bits of it, but we need to bring the team together, you know. I've forgot the second part of the question. Have you?
Yeah.
Right, so
Jess, what are the common themes? I've remembered, sorry. I used AI to prompt me. What are the common themes and ways that you can address some of those challenges?
Yeah. So for me, some common themes are think about the value and the outcome over the technology. It's easy to get technology people in a room. Technology can be taught, right? But thinking about how you're going to use it. So warning signs if somebody says, let's do an AI project. Like, let's throw a bit of AI at that, right? Like, want to change this, and AI might be part of the answer. So thinking about the value. So think about the value is the first thing. The second thing is think about how quickly you can get that value. And is this the easiest way to get it? So a great way for killing AI projects is to say, is AI the easiest way to solve that solution? And most people go, no, it's not, right? I just want to do an AI project, right? So that's fine that you want to do an AI project. That's quite exciting. But, for your stakeholders, your shareholders, your customers, it's what's the quickest, easiest, most proven route to an answer. So think about the value. Think about if this is the easiest way to crack it. The other thing I would say is, I'm going to be dead Scottish, get some new pals, right? So you'll need new people on the journey. So if you go on the journey with the same people, you're going to get the same thoughts or reading the same articles at the same time. So get some new pals, right, of different ages, different groups, different points of view in there. And then probably the other one to think about is bring in the people impact as quick as possible, right? So thinking of that person with their arms folded mentioned earlier on, bring them right into the conversation to be part of it. So the more that people feel like that's not being done to them and they're part of it, then they go on that learning, their voice gets heard, and also they become great change agents. So, I'm imagining that person with their arms folded, like on the way in, all their pals are clapping them in, like you stop them doing that data and AI thing to us. And then they come out and they go, we should be doing some data and AI. And they're like, wasn't expecting you to say that, right? I was expecting all those propeller heads to say that, but not you, right? So if you bring in those people impacted, the people that have got the doubts, if you can turn them round, they become a magnifier for change. So a couple of things in there to think about.
Awesome. There's a couple of bits that kind of leads into two kind of related questions. The first one, do you think that we live in a bubble? So as part of kind of research for doing this podcast, I asked my 11-year-old daughter, what was the first thing that came to mind when I say AI? And can you explain it to me? And she said, robots and no, essentially. And then I asked my wife, who works in a hospice, in the work environment, what is the day-to-day mention of AI? Has it changed anything? Is it visible? Short answer, no. And it led me to think so much of my working life is themed around this just now. It comes up in every conversation. Often I need AI without anything like a problem statement or a use case to try and solve from it. But do you think it is a bit of a bubble based on the world that we live in? And then the second part is, do you feel that in your personal and professional life? Do you think professional, every conversation's AI, personal life different, or is there a bit of a common theme? So yeah, a couple of big questions in there again, Jess.
Bubble. I think if I was to, well, I don't think my friends even know what I do. I don't think my mum could even explain what I do, to be honest. So even asking my mum about AI, yeah, I don't know where that would go. But I think, I do think we live in a bubble. I do think we're slowly talking to people. Like my sister-in-law, I think we were saying this morning, we were talking about something and she went, I'll just Google that quickly. And she opened her ChatGPT app and typed it in. And I thought, so you're probably using AI without even realizing how much you're using it. So I think I think we're definitely in a bubble because I think we talk about it as AI. And I don't think in my personal life, really, I say, oh, Alexa, my AI assistant, could you help me? But you just say, Alexa, can you da-da-da-da? So I think it's definitely there, but I think it's actually knowing AI and using AI, I think, it's two definitely separate things.
Same question, but slight pivot on the last point. Do you think people appreciate they're using AI? And secondly, where does that start to tease us into the ethical debate of the use of data and AI, even if you're not even aware of the fact that that's what's behind the question in technology?
Okay, so I think we are in a bubble, but I think we're aware we're in a bubble, which is the key thing. And that's trying to bring different people into the conversation as one. Similar to you, I don't think my parents have ever known what any of my job titles ever meant, right? And I used to think they were interested in what I did because they would ask me, right? But then when AI became part of what I was doing, they asked me loads of questions about it. And I realised they hadn't been interested in anything I'd ever done up until then, right? So I think although we're in a bubble, there's a growing curiosity round about it. But people are kind of worn down that, well, I don't have a right to have a point of view on that. So again, broken record, back to the education, letting people know that they do have a right to have a point of view. So did some work with a university, which was a course around getting business people very quickly up to speed. And the icebreaker was called AI in the news, right? And so we just talked about AI articles that were in the newspapers or on the television that everybody reads. So the purpose for that was it's a debate that you're allowed to be part of. It's not just in academic papers or consultancy papers anymore. So using that technique suddenly got people that go, I've got a point of view. I've got a valid question that needs answered here. So I think we are in that bubble. I think it's getting bigger. And if we can use much more accessible language. So I always think about how would I convey this to my gran or how would I convey this to my daughter, right? That, particularly with my daughter, that she doesn't roll her eyes by sentence two. Like, what is he talking about? So how can we make it a bit more accessible? And I think sort of segueing into the sort of ethics of it, there's also a bit of inevitability about it that it's getting done to me and I can't say no, right? So imagine going to like your bank and saying, I do want that service from you, but please don't track my data. There's not an option for that. The option is to go somewhere else, and there isn't a somewhere else. So soon we'll drop AI in that, and it'll be, well, I don't want you to use AI. Well, you have to go somewhere else. There's nowhere else to go, right? So there's an inevitability of it. I don't have a choice in it. So again, getting people to go, well, you do have a choice, you need a voice, and the voice is through the ethical use of it. So it's great that there is more chat around ethics, right? That's a win, right? The flip side of that is when you say to someone, well, how are you going to stop doing bad things with AI? They go, I will be ethical. You go, oh, well, brilliant, that's fine, you're going to be ethical, that's fine, I'll just leave you to it, right? And you go, well, what does ethical mean, right? So ethical by definition is subjective, right? And I had lots of conversations with organisations saying, we're going to write down our AI ethics. You're going, great. Piece of input to that is your business ethics. What are your business ethics? Tumbleweed, right? So that someone else's soundbite, I can't remember who said it, but I will credit that it wasn't me. It was like, if you've got AI ethics without business ethics, you've just got marketing material, right? So there's a big conversation about what does it mean to be ethical and how do you do it? And one example was, I won't name the company, but up on stage talking about they were embracing like AI in their organisation. And they said, I'm an ethical person, right? And these are the ethics. And they put up these great bullet points, the unarguable bullet points, right? And they slowly went through them one by one and said how they couldn't do it, right? Because they actually got down to speaking to, say, the CFO, right, the chief financial officer. Go, we can't afford to do that, right? Getting down to the chief risk officer. Well, that's too risky for us to say that, right? So there is a gap between the light bulb, I need to be ethical, and the practicality of being ethical and sharing those ethics. Because what you're then is like codifying your ethics, getting people can challenge them. So the ethics debate, I think it's good that it's happening. It does feel early days though.
Yeah, and if we tease down that ethical debate and focus in on the bias aspect of it, that's very kind of front of discussion at the minute. So if you bake AI into decision making, it will look at information available to it and come up with an answer based on that. So on that basis, is AI an opportunity or a risk in relation to bias? So yeah, I'll come to Jess first on that.
I think it could be twofold. I think there's a risk in it and I guess it kind of links back to what you were saying when you mentioned a number and it said, yeah, that's the number. And in the world of healthcare and law, you can't afford to just be, I think. It has to be accurate. And I think what AI can't do, and I guess it's kind of going back to the human emotion side of it, is it can't, it doesn't have the deep expertise and the deep understanding or sometimes the context. You have a meeting face to face and you think, okay, I'm gonna write something up, I'm gonna write some comms or write some training or whatever it is. But it doesn't have the knowledge of, how many people know about AI or things like that. And I think, there's definitely a risk in the sense of it doesn't have the understanding or the deep knowledge expertise. But I also think from an opportunity perspective, I think it empowers you to do your job better. And I think the empowerment is making people more excited. And I think it can make you do things quicker. So you can, let's say, I don't know, do the mundane tasks that you don't want to do on a day-to-day. So then your brain power is focused on something that needs, critical thinking. You need to do big decision making. So that's where your brain power sits. And actually, the AI tool that you're using is more for the mundane task, the creative. When you're having a bit of a lull and you're thinking, I can't think of an exciting way to make AI sound fun, ask AI to do it for you. And actually taking away those tasks allow you to focus on the more kind of, in-depth, important tasks that you can do.
Awesome. And one of the kind of the points in that question that I'll come to you next on, Craig, is that a lot of what the decision making spits out is inherent bias that exists in society today. So if the answer is something that points to a bias, does that in fact give us an opportunity? Because it's much clearer in text or numbers or percentages, like why do we not have a diverse workforce in a certain organisation as a historic trend is a reality, and AI can bring that to the fore and therefore allow you to do something about it. So any immediate thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think so bias exists. Bias isn't a bad thing. A bias is a shortcut. So like the fact that I'm not sitting here going, remember to breathe in, remember to breathe out, like that's a bias towards surviving, right? So a bit of a cheeky example, but biases are shortcuts. So we've all got shortcuts as one thing. So but I don't think we ever get rid of bias totally. So but the fact that we're aware that bias is there is good, right? And you can use AI to ask for the bias. Like, so is that bias? How does that compare with that other data, as you've said, that societal data? So if we've got the awareness, we've also got the tools to go through it. And then so let's assume that there is bias, right? That's the so what moment. Like, do I live with that bias? Because it allows me to continue to have my role in society, my influence, my power in society, or do I want to change that? So it gets back to the ethical debate in there. So I think from a bias perspective, one, it exists. Two, it's like, what do you want to do about it? Because, for most people, the story is that the people with lots of power, even if you tell them there's bias, they don't want to change it. They might talk a good game, but they want to change it. But how do we change it in smaller stuff? So things that are within our control. So I can't worry about that. Well, I can worry about it. I can't change it, right? So don't worry about it. It's like, what can I change day to day that it becomes normal to talk about bias, acknowledge bias, have a call to action, track it, change it, and create more and more stories of addressing bias is good. And we get a kind of momentum round about it, and it kind of bleeds into other conversations. So I think it's a thing that is there. Acknowledge it, use the tools to help us with it. But the real thing, back to your business ethics, is what are you going to do about it? Because then you get into do I want to positively discriminate right? To shift that. And, I think if you go all the way back, that's the right thing to do. But then if you come all the way back in, individuals change, right? And you get pushback. Well, I didn't do that. Why am I paying the sins of the past? So it's quite a nuanced conversation. So for me, let's take it to small battlegrounds, win on the small battlegrounds, create like a wave of stories that'll kind of shift like how we face into bias and how we change it.
Absolutely. Yeah, positive discrimination is a big topic that I'm going to avoid. So if we flip that back out, to use your analogy of kind of panning back out, there's lots of organisations at the minute that are starting to think about how they leverage AI. There are a multitude of ways to start that. From the experience that we've got at the minute, what would your kind of sharp, how to approach that? Come to Craig first this time.
So thank you. So I can go all the way back. So like three questions for me. Are you making decisions in your organisation? Yes. Could you make them better? Yes. There's an opportunity to use data and AI to make better decisions, right? Have you got processes running through your organisation? Yes. Could they be better? Yes. There's an opportunity to use data and AI to fine-tune those, like in the moment, plan for them, etc. And then the final one is, how would you make someone in your organisation 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times more productive, right? And bring them into that conversation. So what could you take away, right? So if someone, I think it's good to be curious about AI and want to do an AI project, right? So I can't fight that, right? But if I can put people into one of those 3 lanes, right, which ultimately converge in a project, which will need some decision and some process and some people being more effective, it's a good way of channeling it on the outcome. So that I often say, if you're going to do an AI project, there's a risk that you succeed in becoming poorer and older, right, and not delivering any value. And who comes to the we're all poorer and older party? Nobody, right? Who comes to the we did something really valuable for customers party? Lots of people, right? So think about, if you really want to do an AI project, which is good, start on one of those lanes. They'll probably converge, but can you make better decisions? Can you improve your processes? Could your people be 10 times more productive, in brackets, without burning them out? Yeah. Then that's probably where to start.
Awesome. And Jess?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what Craig said. I think it's actually taking a step back. I think it's great that you could give everyone AI, but if no one knows how to use it or actually how to make the best use out of it, I think it's tricky. And also putting it into real world scenarios. So I think going in and just thinking about, okay, doing a bit of discovery work and say, right, this is your processes. How can we get AI to actually fundamentally help you and make you more productive? And is it going to do those mundane tasks that actually will save you, 7 hours a month or something? Great, 7 hours times 12 actually in a year. Wow, you're saving, X amount of time. But you need to find out what they are. You need to find out what their ways of working are, what their processes are, and their level of knowledge. Going back to the education piece, you've got to kind of go through that whole process first before you even give them the tool to understand how they're going to use it, bring them on the journey. And like I said, it's a big behavioural and actually a culture shift. So I think, and culture change is such a big, scary thing to do for some people. And you've got to give them the time to actually get them on board.
Yeah. And I think like the question earlier around, is AI just another digital transformation? I think that is where a lot of the commonality starts to come in, because behind whatever tool set it is, people, processes, training, technology, data, all the kind of boring foundational components have to be in place to be able to meet that. We're going to start wrapping things up. So one last lighthearted question. It is 2050. And you stumble upon a time machine that may or may not be AI empowered. And you can go back to 2025 and you have a short opportunity to give yourself one piece of advice or one warning. What is it, Craig?
Okay. So I'd probably give myself a piece of advice, which is don't overthink it, right? Which it sounds a bit counter to everything else we've said, like, make sure you set yourself up for success, but don't overthink it. So the key word is over. Don't overthink it. Start doing pilots, start learning stuff, small steps as you go forward. And I've mentioned it before, I bring people on the journey. So don't get seduced by that I'm doing an AI project, right? But let's do some quick steps. Get started, surround yourself with good people, bring in the people impacted. That's what I would say.
Awesome. And Jess?
think I would go brace for change. I think, like I said, it's coming at us at all angles, high-speed train. It's coming. So brace for change, but actually embrace the collaboration of it. I think bring it into your day-to-day, slowly, learn what it can do, and actually, embrace it, I think.
Awesome.
Chris,
I want to come back in.
there's 3 seats in the time machine. And it turns out you're sitting next to me.
Yeah.
So what are you going to say?
So for me, other than I mentioned before, the answer couldn't be given a lot of numbers. But if you go back to 2025, I think the bit for me, it's quite a common theme. Get involved, get started, read about it, actually accept, and that's probably a kind of key point out of the conversation for me today, is that you can try and keep it in your peripheral vision, you can try and ignore it, but it is unlikely that is going to be an option going forward. So I think you have to lean in, start listening, start reading, start learning. So on that, we're just going to close things out. So thank you, Jess and Craig, very much for coming along. Thanks for everyone that is watching and listening. I think there's a few key messages that have come out today. So one, AI is inevitable. So therefore, think about people, education, training. Test those reference points. Don't just accept that it has given you the right answer. Be curious and take that opportunity to start using AI. Thanks for all the listeners. There'll be more podcasts coming out soon, and we'll close out.